All right, in today's video, we are going to talk about distributors. I don't know how I'll do this, but what does that look like? There? Or is it better if I have this hose out of the way? I don't know. We're going to talk about distributors and some of the reasons why things are the way they are. And we're going to talk about the distributor drive, dropping it in correctly. And some of you guys might think that's not important, and we're going to talk about why it is, and why it may not be for other circumstances. And you guys who don't know, this is probably the future for a lot of us. This is Pat Down's Shockwave. He's the guy who invented the CB Performance MagnaSpark. Pat's kind of on his own now. He was with CB Performance for a long time. He's one of their main engine builders, QC guy. Amazing guy, Pat is. I've tried to get a hold of him. He's just too busy to talk, but I just know he's really good. So anyway, these are available at CarCraft and also at AA Performance. A few other places have them, but you'll find a lot of times that they're out of stock on the Shockwave. Because they're just having trouble keeping up with demand. So many guys are moving to this. So one of the things I'll tell you with these, if you have a stock engine, sometimes these little bolts here are going to conflict. So you might have to pull your distributor drive to be able to set it, especially if you're putting it on a carbureted engine like this one with a stock carburetor. They will fit with the fuel pump, but they were telling me that you have to pull the distributor drive sometimes and reclock it. So anyway, that's why we're going to go over this in this video. I'm not putting this on this engine, but I'm just going to talk about this since I have it here with this engine that's out of a car, because it's much easier to do. So anyway, distributor, how to drop it correctly. Let's go over that first. So what you want to do is turn it around to top dead center on your timing mark, which is the one on the left. If you have more than one mark, it's usually the one on the left. Okay, because most of your mark, well, some of them, the very left is the after top dead center. So a very late model engine will have the after top dead center timing mark. Most of them have before top dead center, but usually it's a larger mark in the middle. And a lot of times we've found, just so you know, these pulleys can be mismarked. Happens a lot with when you replace the crankshafts today. I don't know if the keyway is in a different place slightly, but we found some of them be off. So if you want to check your pulley to make sure it's right, what you do is you get a long threaded bolt with the engine, disconnect your distributor cap, put a long threaded bolt in your number one spark plug, okay, with it at top dead center. Then what I'll do is I'll turn it just a little bit off at top dead center, bring that long bolt all the way down towards touching the piston, okay, then I'll take and I'll bring it up to where it's touching like right. Usually it's about like right here where it'll touch, or I'll be turning it actually. I'm trying to think. Anyway, it'll touch, let's say, off of top dead center. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll turn the engine all the way around the other way with the bolt in the same position, and I'll turn it all the way around until it hits on that side, and I'll mark it. I'll mark it on both sides. Okay. Mark it on this side, and then so there's going to be a mark there and a mark there. Then what I'll do is I'll find the center of those two marks, and that's the actual top dead center. So, if you are worried about yours being out, it might be. It's just happening a lot. So found that on like 2 engines so far. It was 5 degrees out on one, and it's pretty aggravating when you're setting the time in. It's popping back through the carburetor and you're kind of going, it doesn't sound right. It shouldn't be there. So just something to consider, guys. Make sure you check your pulleys, and also the aftermarket pulleys, the degree pulleys. Some of those be out too. Those are more commonly pretty close. They're usually within a degree, but we find a lot of the other ones are marked pulleys might be way out. So anyway, top dead center. Okay. Now, the next thing I will do is I'll have it at top dead center. I'll pull the valve cover off of this side, number 1. Okay. And then what I'll do is I will wiggle these two. And if they're loose, that tells me I'm at top dead center of number 1. This one so happens to be dropped in the correct position. If it's dropped in the correct position, typically, now this is an aftermarket distributor, there's a little mark right here. There'll be a little mark right here on a 009 or original distributor. This one here is just a Chinese garbage thing. But anyway, they work too. But it'll be marked number 1 somewhere in the neighborhood of where the rotor is right now. If it's not, and you're at number 1 because you know that these ones are loose, okay, and it's pointing another direction, that means your distributor drive is dropped wrong. So let's look at how it should be dropped. The proper way to pull your distributor, I've seen so many guys do it. They go and take this 10 millimeter out. Don't touch that thing, please. Not unless you have to. You go behind in here and you take the whole bracket out by taking this one loose. So you get good at just removing that distributor cap. You guys, I mean, you got to be like professionally good at removing your distributor cap, because you're gonna, every time you pull the carburetor off, anything, that distributor cap just pops right off of there and gives you all the room. Really helps to move the distributor cap off. But you take off this bolt. Once I get this out of here, you'll see exactly where it is. And you take this bolt out of here. All right, we'll get this one off, this nut bolt. It's really a nut. I'm going to get commenters. Hey, that's a nut back there. Okay, thanks. Okay, pull this guy out this way. And the reason you do this, because then your timing stays roughly the same. And it always helps a little when you talk to it a little bit and say, be good. Be good now. Be good. Come on out. Okay. So you keep this bracket in place. Because if you keep this bracket in place, you put the distributor back in, your time is going to be roughly the same. Rarely does it ever change it much. Sometimes it's, if you're on the road or something like that, and you pull your distributor this way, you know, you're probably not going to need a timing light. You know, it'll get you home at least. It'll be close enough. But see how the distributor drive is this way? If you see here and here, there's a half moon. The smaller portion of it, let's get you guys up a little closer. See, this side on towards the front of the car is wider. The narrow side is this way. And, you know, in the book, it'll show this to be perfectly straight, but it never is. It's always a little bit crooked, a little bit, you know, the top right there is a little bit to the back. That's fine. That's the way it normally is. Okay. That's in the correct place. If yours is not in the correct place, then you need to remove your fuel pump. Be very careful taking out this Bakelite. They break. Okay. And it is not fun to get that piece out of there if you've got to get the other half of that out. A lot of times you end up breaking it up into pieces. You might have to pull your oil pump out. Yeah, it's no fun. And take the bottom off of the pickup screen. Might end up with junk in there a couple times before you get it all cleaned out. It's lovely. So be very careful taking these out, these Bakelite things. A lot of times they break off, pulling them out. So just be aware. So I try and not do that. That's why I hate it when somebody drops the distributor drive incorrectly and I have to pull it out. It bugs me. So why is it important for this distributor drive to be in this position at number 1? Well, there's a few different reasons. Number 1, you like everything to be uniform. Okay, you want them all to be the same. So that's one reason. But there's actually a very specific technical reason why that sucker needs to be there. Okay, we've got a pointless distributor here, so I can't, well, this is a crappy one. I didn't buy this, by the way. This isn't mine. So if you see on here when you have points, you have the 4 lobes on here, okay? Number 3 from the factory is retarded. So if this thing is dropped wrong and you just decide, well, it's in the wrong place, it's fine, you just move the wires around to correspond with that, the wrong cylinder is going to be retarded. So the reason they retard number 3 is because then number 3 is not working quite as hard as the other 3 cylinders. If you notice, if Volkswagen has a rough idle from the factory, they're always kind of a little lopey. That's why, because number 3 is a little retarded, and that makes it a little lopey. That's why I love these pointless distributors, not this one in particular, but the other pointless ones, because it makes all of them the same. Now, if you've upgraded your cooling system and all that other stuff, it doesn't really matter that much. If you have an old stand-up cooler, for instance, and when they put the doghouse in, this became almost irrelevant, guys. So a lot of people will not like me saying that, but number 3 was less of an issue getting hot when they came out with the doghouse fan shroud, because the fan shrouds have a number 1 have a bigger fan. There's a thicker fan, more blades on it. And it had a door back here for the air to go out. And so the airflow is adequately even on all the cylinders versus the old ones that had the stand-up cooler. The stand-up cooler, and a couple things would happen is it would get oil inside of them, and then the air wouldn't flow correctly through them. Real biggest problem why number 3 would fail right there. And plus it just naturally, it has that cooler in the way, and air has to flow through that cooler, hot air, by the way, because when it's going through the cooler, it is hot when it comes out of the cooler, okay? And so hot air is landing on number 3, so number 3 always ran hot. Now, when you have the doghouse fan shroud, because the air is exiting out another door that's going out the back, the airflow is more even, and it's not hot air anymore to number 3. So to me, you know, the retarded number 3 was kind of irrelevant. I don't know why they kept it, but maybe they just kept it because then the distributors were the same and all that stuff. So anyway, so to put this back in, you just, you know, find its nice little home, twist it around, you know, a little love tap, maybe, to get it past the O-ring. There it is. And twist it around. It has one place it can go, right? And it goes all the way down. There it is, all the way down. Make sure it's all the way down. And put the nut back on. Okay, we're going to forego doing that right now. Putting the nut back on. And we'll talk about this. So number 3 was retarded. So if you've got your wires hooked up wrong, and your number 1 is not right here, then you're retarding something else, and number 3 is running hot as hell. And so that's not good. It's not, it'll work, it'll run. It's not correct. Okay. So another little trick that I'm going to tell you that I do to check firing order. Okay. Rotation is always clockwise, correct? So 1, 4, 3, 2 is your firing order on a Volkswagen. But everybody, can you guys all count to 4? Okay, I think we can all do that. If you go backwards, like when you're adjusting your valves, you go backwards on a VW. The reason why you turn it reverse rotation is because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody can count to 4, so you can't get your firing order wrong when you're putting on your wires. So whenever I'm putting my wires on, I put number 1 on, number 2 on, number 3 on, number 4. Reverse rotation, instead of going 1, 4, 3, 2, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, easy. Then you can't forget. I've never put them on wrong because of that reason. So again, if you've got a points engine, if it's not a points engine, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because if it's pointless, you can have this thing clocked any way you can. Now, the other reason that they put it this way is so that if you have this drop to correct position. If you have a vacuum advanced distributor, your vacuum advanced should always be about right here. It shouldn't be way over here or way in the back or some weird place. The reason they put it there is because there's space for it. Okay, and so if you see your vacuum advanced way over here near the belt, distributor's dropped wrong, and especially if you're running points, you definitely need to change that. If you're not running points, it can be anywhere it wants. You can do it any way you want because you're not worried about a retarded number 3. Okay? So, we get back to the shock wave. And this is the thing a lot of people are going to freak out on because they go to buy one of these and they're like, well, it doesn't fit. I can't get it in. It fits in everything as far as I've heard. I haven't actually put one in yet, but and let's look at the size of it. It is slightly larger than the other. It's slightly larger, and it has these bolts that stick out. And so when you drop it in the correct position here, you may find that it's not right. Now, there's a couple of options. When you drop it in, when you put the bracket on it, and you drop it in like we just did, okay, you might find that these bolts here conflict with something. It might hit the fuel pump, or it might, when you turn it, it might hit the intake manifold. Depends on the year, make, and model of the car and what engine you have it on. So what you can do are a couple of options. You can change the number of the spark plugs. So say normally number 1's going to be here, right? 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy to count. Harder to know how to spin it the right direction and go by firing order. It's easier to count to 4. So what you can do is you can move the spark plug wire over to the next one and twist it this way. So you can do that. If you tried it a couple of different ways with one of these shock waves or with the CB Performance MagnaSpark, same distributor, by the way, same thing. Okay, you can actually pull the drive out. Worst case scenario, pull the fuel pump, pull the drive out, and put it in a different position. Then you can do that too, because this does not have a retarded number 3. Again, if you got a doghouse fan shroud, it's kind of, I don't know, having a retarded number 3 is not nearly as important as the old stand-up cooler, and that's why they made it. So anyway, hopefully that helps you guys with your, old guys have trouble getting up sometimes. Hope it helps you guys with your distributor issues. Maybe that'll help you solve some problems. Another thing, I'm going to touch on this because somebody said something, and listen, they go, well, you're always running a mechanical advance. Okay, vacuum advance versus mechanical advance. So, regardless of how it happens, advance happens on your as you raise your RPMs. So you got carburetor vacuum, okay, running the advance, or you have mechanical advance. As the RPMs raise, more vacuum goes through the carburetor, and it picks up here on a little tube as it goes through and actually pulls vacuum up slowly. Now, as the airspeed goes through your carburetor. Now, what can happen, a lot of guys like to do is they want to go with the vacuum advance, because really the only reason to do that is because you've got a lot of compression and you want it to come on slower. And so you don't want to have all that advance at low RPMs when you're bogging it. Okay, and bring it on a little slower. We used to do things with, they have a vacuum, I'm trying to think, it makes the vacuum slower. We used to go to Pick Apart and grab those off of cars, off the late model cars, like General Motors would have them. It was called a vacuum, I'm trying to think the name of it, can't remember. Anyway, it would bring on the vacuum really slow. And so we'd run more advance, and then we'd have it come on slower from the vacuum advance. So there's more stuff you can do with the vacuum advance, is what I'm trying to say. And somebody says, well, you should always run the vacuum advance for the engines you have. That's probably inapplicable for me. Most of mine don't have an issue with pinging. The advance, when it comes on, is fine. I'm okay with my mechanical advance. And the only time, like I said, that it really makes a difference is if you're running really high compression and you want that advance to come on slower. And that's what the vacuum advance does, is it kind of, because it comes on with airspeed through the carburetor, so it may not come on as fast. It also can come on, if you're flooring it going slow, the speed of the air might go through the carburetor faster and actually give you more advance, which might not be good. So to me, it's just, I don't know, I'd rather just run mechanical. It's simpler, it does, I've done both ways. I've had vacuum advance distributors, okay, and I know how to finagle all this stuff. With these, same thing. With these new ones, you can do the things we used to do with the old GM. They have weights on the distributor in here. You can change them, and you can bring the advance on faster or slower by changing the weights in these and changing the springs. We used to do all that stuff. I used to do all that stuff with a vacuum advance distributor. We used to do it with vacuum and with mechanicals, because they have both. The General Motors and stuff like that have both. And we used to use what was called, it would restrict the amount of vacuum, bring it on slower, and we used to use that so that only full advance would come on at very high RPMs, and we used to use that all the time. That little valve that we would get from Pick Apart, and add it to the system to kind of play with the advance and get it to come on right. With VWs, I don't have that issue. So anyway, people go, oh, if you play with that, it'll make it better. Usually it's just jetting. If I get the jetting right, everything works perfect. So I don't know. That's just the way I do it. But anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Talk to you next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.